Welcome to this week's Rob's Country. We're going to be looking at a lot of things today. We're going to be, for example, finding out that it's a bit drier than you probably think it is. We're also going to be talking cropping with Dennis Carter and taking another wee look at the Aoraki Polytech and what they're doing to educate your industry's new people. But first of all, there's an election looming and you guys are right into the manifestos.
We are. I mean, all the political parties have got their own manifestos out with all these wonderful policies they hope to suck the voters in with.
Nobody's heard them because of that other rubbish.
I know. No one's really listening to the policies, which is a real shame, because some of them are worth listening to, others, I don't know. But Rural Women, we've put out our own manifesto because a lot of the parties, they put out a manifesto from what they think voters want, but we've looked at actually what people need in the rural community. So we've put out our own manifesto with a range of ideas on what we think the governments need to be looking at for the future.
Floor's yours.
Well, an example would be electricity. Like from next year, lines companies have the ability to not replace lines as they wear out if they're deeming them for some reason not needing to be replaced. So that's reducing the efficiency of the electricity supply in those far-off lines. And if you're way down the end of some line and they decide not to replace it, where does that leave you? And we're saying, well, okay, yeah, exactly, in the dark, and not able to, run power for pumps for your house water or your irrigation or dairy sheds or anything like that. So we're saying, okay, if you're going to come up with an alternative supply, that's all very well, but it has to work and it has to be affordable. So we're wanting the government to make sure that if those alternative supplies are put in place, that they are actually affordable and people can, actually afford the electricity alternatives that are going to be put in place.
So what are you doing, generators or something?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. No one has said what the alternatives are going to be, just that the lines companies can use an alternative form of supply. It could be that you end up with a wind generator or you could end up with some other form of generation, but doesn't necessarily mean it's as affordable as the current supply that you have. So we want the government to actually say, yes, they'll make sure that whatever's put in place is equally as cost efficient as what you've currently got.
And equally as efficient. So
as efficient and reliable.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, and other things we're looking at are the Domestic Violence Act. When we talk about protection orders, a lot of those are about protecting the mother or the children, but no one thinks about the pets and the animals, and we see a lot of domestic violence cases, particularly in rural, where pets and livestock are at risk as well. We see a lot of evidence that SPCA have and MAF through Animal Welfare have that the animals are equally at risk of violence against them. So we're wanting to say, well, okay, with these protection orders, let's include the animals as well and make sure they're well protected too. We've
got the broken tails of the cow that guy was prosecuted about.
And a lot of evidence where, they're hit with a lead pipe. And as an example of, well, if you don't treat me right, this is what will happen to you. So they smack the cow and the cow's, badly injured, it's an intimidation to the woman. We're saying, well, let's protect the animals as well in those protection orders. We're also looking at mammograms for women. Now, currently the mobile bus that goes around doing mammograms, that service cuts off at 69, but for women as a free service. But for a lot of women, the evidence suggests that the risk of breast cancer increases after you're 70, but rural women don't have access to that mammogram service after they're 69. And we're saying, well, that's actually rather unfair and rather silly.
It's discriminating. Yep.
It is very discriminating. And we're saying, well, let's still make the mobile bus free for women over 70 in rural areas, because we do see that with women having to travel to town for those mammograms, the rural women don't tend to do that as often as urban women. So they're at risk there. And the other one that's particularly important to us is the nurse practitioners. These are health professionals who do a lot of work in the rural medical centres where we constantly have trouble keeping doctors, and they're operating on locums. So we have nurse practitioners who can do a lot of that lower level prescribing and medical services. And in the hard to staff areas, we're saying, why can't nurse practitioners be included in that bonding system that we have, where they're currently bonding doctors to services? Let's include nurse practitioners in there as well as professionals. And interestingly, the hard to staff areas aren't necessarily rural. The ministry provides the bonding service for what they term hard to staff, but that could be suburbs in Auckland. Doesn't necessarily mean rural, and we're saying actually rural are very hard to staff and we need to have special consideration for those areas.
Brilliant. Very briefly,
yep.
what have you done with it? I mean,
What have we done with it?
listening?
Well, it's out there for all our members to have it. They're taking it out to the candidates' meetings, and they're discussing it, raising those questions with candidates at all those meetings and discussing those issues with the different candidates from the different parties and saying, look, what's your party going to do about this, and trying to get them thinking about issues, particularly from a rural aspect.
And they'll follow it up afterwards.
Absolutely,
I'm very, very sure,
they
Kerry.
will.
Thank you very
Yes.
much indeed. After the break, we're going to be talking about good news if you're an horse. Welcome back to Rob's Country. Now, obviously the big news as far as dairying is concerned is it's going backwards price-wise, and you guys are saying, well, you've got to make every cent count.
It's a low payout scenario, and I think farmers really have to scratch their heads and decide carefully what they're going to spend their money on. And as you know, cows are microbial digesters. They rely on good gut biology to convert their feed profitably into milk. And we would assert that in a low payout environment, BioBrew as a fresh microbial tool is a good choice for a farmer to make.
So what you're saying is that prevention rather than cure at this stage?
Well, that's twofold. Firstly, it's difficult to afford expensive interventions, and so it's better to keep your cows well. And the way that probiotics work, challenging pathogens, is effective, but also the way that probiotics can help with feed conversion efficiency is an important consideration too.
So you're slowing everything down on its journey from one end to the other?
Processing it well, using the microbes to get out of that feed ration what they need in order to produce milk.
Is this something that goes hand in glove with more and more platform feeding and cut and carry?
Well, farmers are increasingly trying to find ways to efficiently feed their animals. And cut and carry, feed pads, or just good old-fashioned grazing all has one basic goal, and that is to feed the animal what they need to produce milk profitably. All of that happens through microbial action in the cow's gut, and here we are with a credible microbial tool.
And calving?
Calving, as you know, is well underway everywhere, and lots of our customers are reporting good results both in terms of disease prevention and in terms of calf growth, mixing 5 mils of BioBrew per calf into the milk every day.
Right, that's the commercial, right? Andre, you've got another string to your bow, and if you're an horse, you're laughing.
The past 3 weeks has been incredibly busy. We launched EquiBrew 3 weeks ago today, and in those 3 weeks we've had a tremendous amount of interest. Our Facebook page has gone nuts, and we've added today our 20th retailer. So virtually one retailer a day. The phone's ringing off the hook.
Well, I'm going to take some of the kudos for that because you did it on Rob's Country. But no, seriously, people are obviously looking for it now.
Well, horses are very vulnerable animals. They're true grazers, they're hindgut fermenters, and we're putting into them a ration that they did not evolve to consume. Add to that we hop on their back and make them do all kinds of athletic things, and it's unsurprising that they've got gut ailments. And folks have been spending an awful lot of money to try to deal with problems that are based on gut biology, and again, here we have a credible microbial tool, and it works a treat.
Why didn't anyone think of it before?
Well, we scratch our heads and ask ourselves that.
And then you grin and say, well,
that's right. Here's our business. A fresh product has commercial inconvenience, shall we say. You have to distribute it properly. You have a short shelf life. In the case of EquiBrew, it arrives at the retailer with a 2-month shelf life. So we and the retailers have to work together in a different way to serve the customer's needs. But you wouldn't want to be freeze-dried, and neither does a microbe. And so we're simply doing the job the way the microbes want it done.
And this is, I want to push the fact that this is a University of Lincoln project as well as a commercial outlook, isn't it?
It is. We've been working with Lincoln since 2010, and our microbial viability numbers and our shelf life has been improved tremendously through that collaboration, and we continue that to this day. Don and I were meeting with our Malik Hussein, who supervises our work there, earlier today.
And it's something which they are obviously backing as a thing for the future?
Well, we see a long cooperation and collaboration with Lincoln. The product development plans that we have with them are exciting, and BioBrew and EquiBrew are just the tip of the iceberg.
Tell me about Equi Days.
Well, Equidays is a bit like the field days for the horse world. It's held at Mystery Creek. It's on the 17th through 19th of October, and we're going to be there supporting our retailers and providing information on the product. There's lots of events. It's a competition as well as a trade show.
So everything's pretty good then if you're a horse owner or happen to be an horse.
Well, we seem to be solving a lot of problems that other products haven't been able to deal with. And I think that the horse world has needed a good probiotic for a long time, and I'm proud to be filling that niche.
That's good, and obviously, as the old saying goes, and a very good retailer will have it.
All the good retailers will soon have it.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's take another look at the Aoraki Polytech and what they're doing for your industry. Start off really with the course and what you're actually doing is for the primary industries.
Well, there are two areas, Rob, that one we're just starting is the new Diploma in Agribusiness Management, which is an online course through the Polytech here in conjunction with the primary ITO. And it's a new format in that the participants or students are actually pretty much full-time on farm, and this is a chance for them to get an advanced diploma in management in an online forum. And so it's self-paced, self-speed, up to 3 years they can take to do it. Probably the biggest plus to it is they can get acknowledgement of their skills and development that they already bring into the job, be it from agriculture or from outside. For example, they might have worked in a bank and been involved in finance or human resource management. Those skills come over straight into the course. You don't have to relearn what you're doing. So if you've written a job description in another format, a job description's a job description. Performance appraisal's a performance appraisal, be it on a dairy farm or a banking, retailing or another industry.
So there are people coming into the industry from outside?
Yes, very much so. One young gentleman, he's working on a cropping farm and he spent a number of years working for a district council. And so he's able to bring and be accredited those skills from that industry over into this new management.
Employers, where do they fit in?
Well, their support is by making their business available, because at some stage these students have a project, and so there may be something on the farm that, for example, a centre pivot may be being contemplated, and so we're hoping that the employers will be open to some of their financial decisions without getting down into a very personal detail. But this is an employee perhaps moving up into management, and so hopefully they will have access to some of the broader financial details and operations of their business.
So you're looking more at people who are going to be senior as far as farming is concerned, rather than milk harvesters, as it were?
Oh, yes. This is very much looking at people taking the next step in the dairy industry, people stepping up into herd managers, contract milkers, even share milkers. So that's the sort of the progression we're looking at for that agribusiness management diploma.
Are people starting to see farming as an option now?
I think very much so. There's a group that enjoy that lifestyle of being out in the fresh air, or not so fresh air at times. One of the farms I do some work on, their theme is living the dream. Well, in the cold southerly the other day, I joked to them, I said, is this a dream or a nightmare at the moment? But 24 hours later, brilliant sunshine, everyone threw off their overalls, and it was just beautiful to be working. But for a couple of hours it was raincoats and the heavy wet weather gear as the front came through.
Are people starting to understand that working with animals is a lovely occupation?
I think so. The environment is just being out there in the fresh air, the sunshine. While there's pressured times, there's also times for lots of interaction and humour and camaraderie. There are a lot of other occupations where you can be very lonely, even though you're in a very busy office. But out on the farm, you have to work as a team. Very rarely are you actually doing something on your own by yourself. That's in the modern farm. As we get bigger and more corporate, they are more people are doing it.
So somebody who's listening to you right now and saying, I'd like to have a go at that, what do they do?
Yes, I was getting some skill and some basic introduction. The Polytech offers some introductory level 2 and level 3 agricultural courses. They're sort of more full-time based, but we're also developing a level 3 sort of cadetship where they can come and have a block of in full-time study where they'll learn some basic and elementary stock and tractor and safety skills, and then we'll go out and do some work on farm, so they actually get the practical application that then is supported by a couple of days a week of theory and understanding. And then of course there's the primary ITO where you actually get a job on farm and then have time out and then progress through the various courses that are available.
Because I guess a lot of town or city folk would be saying, well, I haven't learnt from a father like the farming children have.
Yes, as I talk to some of the diploma students, that they have to remember that if they were brought up on farms, that a lot of their employees now don't come with that inherent skill. It has to be learnt and developed, and so they have to be more understanding that, how did I learn? You know, I might have been 5, 6, 7, 8, and I got yelled at by Dad not to stand there or to do this, and so they have to remember that person now might be 16, 17, 18, and so that takes time to develop those what we think are natural skills. When we're born, we don't come with how we tie our shoelaces and do up a belt. Those are all things that we learn, and so we need to expect that we're going to have to encourage and develop those skills in our employees.
But you are offering that sort of skill learning.
Yes, and the businesses these days want to have a lot of those base skills in an employee before they actually start on farm. The farms are really too busy, too important, too much money involved just to say, you know, jump on the tractor and drive it. You know, it could be a $150,000 tractor. You want to know that the person has got some skill in understanding what they're working with.
But you can provide that?
Yes.
Tell me about your Lincoln tie-up.
Yes, we also have a relationship with Lincoln University, and the Polytech offers support classes for their regional diploma in agriculture. So it's a level 5 diploma, so you can either go to Lincoln and do a 1-year study, or you can do it on farm, and we offer 2 papers a semester, so it would be a 2-year diploma working on farm. And so I have a group of students spread through Mid and South Canterbury, North Otago, that are doing that.
So you're busy enough, aren't you, really?
Yes, but they sort of dovetail quite nicely together. So the Lincoln diploma has got, you know, some animal science material, some bioscience, a bit of computers, farm management, a bit of agricultural engineering. And so it's sort of a stepping stone perhaps between the primary ITO level 3, level 4 courses, then the Lincoln diploma, and then the agribusiness because the agribusiness management is more getting in towards the finance, HR, personnel management, project management, whereas the Lincoln diploma is a little bit more of the soil science, biology, animal science, genetics.
And you've got Sir Basil Arthur Farm.
Yes, we've got the rural training unit out there at behind Sir Basil Arthur, and so that's where the level 2 and level 3 courses are based, and so they have got the teaching environment, but they've also got sort of this practical lab. So there's, it's a sizable little unit, so there's a number of animals they can be exposed to and work with to get those elementary skills.
And it's an always changing industry, isn't it?
Oh, forever changing. But the core base skills are there that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. I mean, sheep are still sheep and cows are still cows. They haven't changed a whole lot in a couple of generations.
Well, that's a fairly good point, actually. They haven't changed much in the last couple of generations. Seed certification entries.
Yes, Rob. Early September is a critical time for most of those entries, and Assure Quality, who are running the Seed Certification Bureau, have been very, very good and very, very patient for many, many years, and now they've taken us to put certification entries online. You can still do it the old way if you want to, but they've lost their sense of humour, and
they held it for a long time then.
Yes, they've been very, very good, yeah. But really now they are going to enforce late entries and charge a penalty for that. So that's a stern warning as to if you haven't done it, get on with it, or make a decision. Is that crop going to make the grade, or is it out? And if you have put it in and you're not going to keep it, withdraw it. But it will still be on their computer records as a seed contaminant for the future.
Done. Cleaning up, speaking of that sort of thing, chemicals and such.
Yes, Rob. Often farmers look through their spray sheds and they see, part container of this and so forth, and they think, and it sits there for years and years and years, and they think, well, what will I do with it? What should I do with it? Well, basically what they should do with it is read the label, see what it's registered for, and use it on that crop, or get it used on the same crop that it's certified for, registered for, sorry. So that's the best thing to do with those, apart from occasionally you get the people who will come around and do a clean-up for you, or they'll probably start charging you now, ag recovery. And the other thing is when you're actually finished doing your spraying in a field, and there's a little bit of residue left in the sprayer, the best thing to do is most sprayers these days carry a supply of fresh water that can be transferred across to the spray tank. Either do that, take it across to the spray tank and circulate it through the pump and through everything, and spray it on the field that you're leaving. So that's where you have been using it, and that's where the residue should go. Or go back to your point of washdown, put some fresh clean water in the sprayer, and drive back to that field and spray it out on that field. That is. So
this is, for instance, not going to dilute what you've already put on there too much?
Not particularly. You can do all sorts of things like lower your application rates and just put a fine bit on just to get rid of that type of thing. But that is probably the safest, environmentally the best way to dispose of those chemical residues.
Good. New malting contract?
Yes, Rob. Malting contract number 3 from Malt Europe, and they're trying to educate us farmers into a new form of contracting where they'll bring out an early contract and farmers decide on the market, look into the future and say, well, yes, I will, or no, I won't. There's been 1 or 2 farmers who have sat back on their hands and they've been their regular growers and they haven't committed to any crop at all. And this last one, I think, is aimed at them, giving them a final chance to get some of the pie. They came out at 4.35 for a start, and sorry, 4.40. The first one was at 4.40. The next one came, and very little uptake. The second one came back at 4.35, $5 less, a big uptake, and the last one has dropped back by $10 to 4.25. Now, The market, of course, since the dairy payout and those sorts of things, the shock of that has drifted away. Looking at contracts forward into 2015, the feed ones have slowly dropped away as well. So I think this is also a fair and reasonable offering for those malting growers who haven't taken up anything. It's potentially going to be sort of, if you apply for a certain tonnage, you may not get that entire tonnage. So they're getting very close to full. So I would suggest that farmers, if they haven't and they want to, do something, because it appears to be pretty fair.
Palm kernel.
Yes, palm kernel, the opposition to the New Zealand grain growers. Yes, the imported equaliser. It's always a lot cheaper. It's inferior, but we are the world's biggest user of that product, and we take 40% of the total world supply of that. And the imports into New Zealand have well and truly exceeded 1 million tonnes. So there's a lot of dairy cows eating this stuff. It looks like soil, and it is very, very abrasive to their stomachs, but it will keep cows alive in a drought, and it will keep a lid on grain prices. And
that's the point, isn't it?
That's what dairy farmers tell me. The two good things: keeps cows alive in a drought and keeps the lid on grain prices. But it's not the nicest stuff, but here we are with the biggest users in the world.
But apart from that, you guys are pretty busy.
Yes, it hasn't rained for a long, long time, and the soil conditions are coming right, and all sorts of deadlines are trying to be met with sowing times and getting crops in, beating the drought. It looks like it's going to be quite a dry one. Dr. Deveron might have different stories about.
Well, he's going to come on shortly. So
he's going to come on, and he'll have a forecast for us.
Yes, he will.
We'll listen with interest. But certainly, yes, doing big hours and getting rid of sheep, and some farmers cropping farmers are also calving, things like that. Heavy rolling, drilling, drenching, shearing, you name it, spraying, and very soon we'll be irrigating.
Barley.
Barley, yes, don't get that barley in on heavy soils too early. It's very, very sensitive to temperature, and sometimes we see a thing called rugby stocking where barley's struggling up through cold soils, and you get a warm day and then a frost at night, and you get the stripping effect through it. And it's called rugby stocking, but it's basically just showing that it is sensitive to soil temperatures. And certainly another thing to look at is look at nature, look at the poplar trees. As soon as the poplar trees break bud, put your barley in.
Good advice. After the break, we're going to get more good advice when we talk farm accounting. Welcome back to Rob's Country. Dairying, good and bad, if you're talking farm accounting.
Yeah, well, obviously we've got some drastic news about the dairy payout, and one of the major banks, ANZ, coming out and saying they're looking at 5.25 as their payout. I was talking to someone from another bank today, and they're possibly going to be going lower in their forecast, which has come as a bit of a shock.
But that's for budgets, Kerry, or is it? But that's what they expect.
That's what they're expecting. So it's pretty hard. Our farmers that we've been working with and their advisors we're around the 570 to 560 mark is their worst case scenario. Obviously we're back to the drawing board with some of those. So it's pretty hard out there, and it's time for them to start thinking about their checkbooks and what they're doing with them.
It does lead into something you and I have discussed before, which is constantly upgrade your budgets and
Yes.
constantly keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Talk to your accountant.
Yeah, we've got one where we're working with them every month. We sit down and go through their budgets, we look at what they've done. The farm advisors coming in it with us. It's good to have an outside perspective as well, and it is constantly changing. I think we've done 4 drafts for them in the last 3 weeks on different prices and different scenarios of their spending. So it's crucial that you keep looking at those, because you need to start thinking to the end of the financial year, even though it's a long way off, and where you want to be and setting yourself up for the next season as well.
Who makes the decision whether you're putting fertiliser on or not, because that's a cost?
It comes down to the farmer. He knows what the farm needs, but the money's got to be there in the first place. So if it's looking like the budget's pretty tight, then we will, along with advisors, give a bit of prompting, look for other areas where we can trim, because obviously it's one of the crucial things to keep the grass growing. So yeah, if need be, we'll give a prompt and say, look, you've got RMM budget of this, let's cut back on there and just sort of move money around where possible.
People who have been getting a high payout and are now going to be looking at a low one still have to pay provisional tax on the high one.
Yes, yep, they do. But you can estimate, so you can forecast downwards, and that's where your budgets become absolutely crucial. Because if you're basing it on previous seasons, the high payout, then your tax obligations are going to be huge. So that's where you should sit down with the accountant, go through what you think your profit's going to be. It's obviously going to be well down, so it makes sense to go ahead and put an estimate in with IRD. Yep. It does come with a risk though, that you've got to get it right. So don't go too low. Still allow a little bit of fat in there basically. So we're sort of saying to our farmers, right, we're budgeting this, we're going to add 10% on top as a margin. So if we do get it wrong, at least we've overpaid rather than underpaid.
Yeah. I guess you've got templates where you, on a computer you fill in, you change 2 little columns and the whole bottom line changes.
Yeah, it's sort of like that.
Sort
it's
of
a
like
little
that.
bit more, there's a few more things that go on behind it. We've got to the point where we've got templates, but it's customised to each farm because they've all got different variables. So we try and move it around to suit them. But generally, especially your farm advisors, they'll come up with a standard type template and give you a good starting point anyway.
Are you talking to people saying disposable income's got to be whacked?
We're having the hard talk. We don't necessarily have to have everyone. Some of them know, and they've started taking that. They've looked at what they're taking personally off the place and what their plans were, etc. So some of them have started to take that action, but definitely we are making mention of it. It's not an area we like to get into because we don't want to tell people how to live, but it's a reality of what we're facing.
And I guess there's a case of do I need it or do I want it?
Yes, indeed, yep. And the wants are always bigger than the needs. And that's the things that we work hard to convince people on.
So really there is good news in amongst all that bad news.
Yeah, and then the other positive news is that we've got the Reserve Bank out next week with their monetary statement. So looking ahead to the interest rates, I expect that we're not going to see the same increases that's been forecast. And in fact, next year we probably will see very little increase. Might see a little bit of movement, maybe 0.5% if that, I'd say. So interest rates are definitely going to be favourable for those farmers that are struggling.
Oh, that's good. Now, you wanted to talk about people falling off the perch for the want of a better term.
Yes, we've had recently a couple of deaths through our client base, and it's just generally giving people a heads up that they need to be prepared. So they need to be thinking about their wills for a start, making sure they've got one, they know where it is, that it's up to date. Recently I've seen someone that came in to update theirs and it referred to a farm they had 40 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So that was obviously going to cause a bit of a problem if they dropped dead. So we've updated there. But also need to think about what happens when you are dead. In terms of that farm, it's got to carry on. Who are you going to appoint to actually carry on running the place? And that's never normally thought about at the time you do a will or whatever. And it's not, the neighbours might jump in, but they might be too busy.
How often are you seeing as a professional that one of the members, perhaps the guy, and I don't want to sort of go too much about that, but doesn't tell anybody else anything because they don't really think they need to know?
It's absolutely common. It's very rare for them to sort of tell anyone else anything. It's all in their heads, and that's where it is. And if it's not documented anywhere, then you've got some big problems.
Well, you don't, but the person who survives you does.
Yes, and then they normally turn to their lawyer and accountant to help them out. And if you don't know what was intended or how things were going, and what the operations etc. were, then it becomes even harder.
So, Kerry, the take-home message is talk to your professionals and, goodness sake, talk to other people in the family.
Yes, yep, make sure at least your partner or one of your kids, if not any of them, a good neighbour that you trust.
Or trustee of your affairs.
Yeah, somebody that's important to you that will at least carry on what you wanted.
Because it does happen.
It does, yeah.
Kerry, thank you very much indeed. Stick with your local accountant because he or she is vital to your operation. After the break, it's irrigation with Dr. Tony Darravin. Welcome back to Rob's Country. What he reckoned? Hit September and we'll be into it, and you were bang on.
Yeah, I said, I don't know how long ago, that it would
Quite
be
some
about
time ago,
it would
Tony.
be the 1st of September and we'd be going. And we've got guys irrigating this week. If you look at it, it hasn't really rained since the 20th of July. So we've had a long period, as Dennis said, we've had a long period now where we haven't had any rain. It's been coolish up until the last beginning of August, and since the beginning of August, it's really cranked in, And yep, we're up and away. Anybody that on the lighter soils, the shallower soils, that hasn't got things sorted out and ready to go, they could miss the 8 ball this year.
It's been very deceiving. We've had cold, overcast days throughout New Zealand.
Yeah, if you look back at the soil moisture record, for example, back in the middle part of August, we had a period where it was sort of it was a bit overcast and gloomy, and the south of the South Island was getting snow, and it was coolish. We didn't really get very much in the way of rainfall. We're getting 3s and 5s and that sort of thing. It was just enough to meet the demand that was going on during the weeks.
What's that dotted line that goes straight across?
Yeah, the dotted line at the bottom is where we're going to come under stress. So, and I've ringed where we're going to reach that point. So when I talked to you in the middle of August, I was saying that I reckon it was going to be about the 1st of September, given the sort of water uses that we could expect. And if you look at what's happened since about the 20th of August, well, we are right on the line of decreasing soil moistures. For those that are on rotational systems right now, and you're on light soils, then we need to be done they need to have done by around about the 16th or 17th of September. So pretty easy to figure out. If you've got to be finished by the 16th or 17th of September, you've got 12 days. As of today. And if you're on a 12-day round, then you really should be going. Because if you get behind and we reach and you haven't irrigated by the time we get to the 16th or 17th of September, days are longer, temperature's going to be higher, demand's going to be higher, and the last thing you want to be doing in the early part of the season is trying to catch up with irrigation water. Really difficult. So for those that have got centre pivots, we can hang about for another week or so. 5 to 6 days, and then go around and put 10 millimetres on, wait a week again, go and put another 10 millimetres on. But when you have a return period type irrigation system on light soils and you've got pastures, then you need to be going now.
Right. Soil temperatures though, it's been cold.
Oh, soil temperatures, no, quite the opposite. Soil temperatures this year are remarkably warm. If we look at soil temperatures since the beginning of August, for example, and the plot shows you that we've been sitting above 4 degrees minimum soil temperature, so that's whatever is recorded during the day, for the entire months of June, July and August. Oof. That's really unusual for Canterbury. Normally, if we get a sequence of 2 or 3 degree frosts, nothing for us to get our soil temperatures down to at 10 centimetres, down to 0, 1 or 2 degrees. We haven't dropped below 4.2 degrees. And if you look at the average soil temperature for August until now, we've been cranking along at 7.5 degrees.
So you've got growth all the way through.
So we've got growth, and also our 9 a.m. temperature, which is sort of the key to kicking growth and everything into gear, is about 6.5 degrees C. So that means we're going to get a 3 to 4 degree temperature shift during the day, so we're going to get up to about 10 degrees during the day. So we're at the point now where things are going to really happen in a hurry. Those temperatures, we've mineralised a whole lot of nitrogen. It's sitting there, it's waiting to go. We haven't had any rain, we haven't had any big rains to actually leach any of that away, so it is sitting there in the root zone, just waiting for the right conditions, and the right conditions are about a week to 10 days away. I think about a week before we get to the equinox. So somewhere around the 14th, 15th, 16th of September, things are going to really crank into gear.
What happens with daylight saving when you do these temperature things?
Well, we just take them at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock in the morning.
That's right. I wasn't being smart, really.
No. That's a very good point, because if you look at the 9 o'clock temperature then it's actually, if we take it at 9 o'clock, it's actually the 8 o'clock soil temperature. Yeah. It's not the 9 o'clock temperature. So it's what you measure at 10 o'clock, because that's the temperature that drives all the crop models. So when you work out what your potential yields are, you put a threshold temperature in, and for pastures it's 10 degrees. And if you exceed 10 degrees, then you'll optimise growth. And so we're close to being at that at 9 o'clock in the morning now. And we're already seeing temperatures rising above 10 degrees at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're on a really nice scale at the moment of increasing soil temperatures. Soil moistures are becoming limiting in about a week's time to 10 days' time. So given we're going to have warm soil temperatures, we need to supplement that with some water, and things are just going to crank into gear come the equinox.
We've got enough underwater supply?
Groundwater's great. Yeah, groundwater is, and we've got record groundwater levels pretty much across the plains. The scary thing is that there's not a big snowmelt. I mean, we know that there's ski fields that didn't even open this year in Canterbury. So we don't have a big snowmelt coming. We're not getting any northwest storms, which is what we need for the Waimak, the Rakaia. North Island's fantastic. They've just had another 80 or 90 millimetres along the east coast, so they're sweet. They don't have any issues. Yeah. But if we don't get some big northwesterly storms, then these rivers are going to cause us some issues earlier this year than they would normally cause us issues.
And that's going to cause all sorts of headlines.
Yep. And we're going to, as Dennis alluded to, I mean, the indications are right now we're still heading into an El Nino summer. They're still talking about it being similar to 97, 98, and that was a very strong El Nino. If we continue down that path, we're in for a long, dry, warm season.
The townies will love it.
They'll love it.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. After the break, we're talking Angora goats. Back to Rob's country. Well, they quietly tickling along under the radar, but aren't they, Angora goats?
Yeah, they've been tickling along for a long time, you know. We really quite enjoy that because the money's good, and as long as the money's flowing into our bank accounts, we're not going to...
You're not going to share it with everybody else.
No. You know, somebody with a couple of thousand goats, they're probably getting 80 to 90,000 a year in fibre prices alone. I mean, that takes sheep back to the old wool days when wool was worth a fortune, you know, but it's
not just New Zealand. You've just been to South Africa?
Yeah, I was in South Africa late last year for the World Mohair Convention, and the mood's very, very buoyant there. They're doing very, very well. Numbers are holding. South Africa's a difficult place because they've got a lot of game farms, which game farms hold predators, and the old warthog punches holes in fences and lets the small predators out like the jackals, but also baboons, snakes and leopards and bits and pieces. They can predator on the Angora goats, and as these game farms are becoming more prolific because they're quite a good source of income, it's making it quite hard to farm Angoras. So, but they're still farming in reasonable numbers there, and you know, their numbers are going up slightly, but there's an immense world shortage of fibre, and prices as a result are just skyrocketing the whole time. Every sale, I would say, for the last 5 years, the price has risen.
What are you getting nowadays?
Well, we're getting last August, I think I paid out for the autumn clip, and that was about 17.07 a kilo, and that includes stags. Now, when you consider that a goat's cutting about 4 kilos, it's not a bad income for fibre alone. So it's, as against 10 years ago, it was $7 a kilo, so it's been steadily rising the whole time.
And it still is?
And people are, you know, very happy to see the rise. Yes, it's the last sale in South Africa the other day was $21.97, the average price, which would give about... I suppose you can take $2 off that by the time we ship it from here. So,
so what are we doing numbers-wise in New Zealand? Because, you know, you said that we're keeping it low below the radar.
Yeah, numbers have stayed pretty stable over the last few years. In fact, they've probably dropped slowly, as some of the old farmers have fallen off the perch, probably, is the best way to describe it. And... you know, numbers, I would say, well, we're clipping probably 30 to 40 tonnes of mohair. So you can divide that into, you know, 4 kilos an animal. You've got the number of animals, really. So it's not a great deal of animals, but they're producing a good income, especially for the farmers who've got bigger numbers and running them on bigger scales.
Now, you've opened it up. It used to be just the Angoras, but now you're getting all goats involved as a management.
Yeah, well, federated farmers have asked the other goats to come on board, the meat goats and the dairy goats. The meat goats have come on board. The dairy goats, we're still waiting. The dairy goats are producing very good incomes. And the thing is this, that goats have common problems with that need research.
That's your fun. That's why we're running an order. So but basically, that you're trying to get everybody together, which I think is great.
Yeah, and you know, to get any research or government grants and bits and pieces, we have to. Well, we really want to start a levy, you know, so we can levy our goats, and to do that, we have to have all goats on board. Otherwise, we won't get the legislation through Parliament.
Exactly. What will the levy be used for?
The levy will be used for research and promotion. That's the main things. You know, there's quite a few things. I mean, we've just about got feet under control, but there's all sorts of things like worms. There are no registered, well, there's about one registered product for worms. All the other products are off licence, and to use an off-licence product, you have to have a 90-day withholding period.
So they're more susceptible to worms or parasites than we ever think, because you think of a goat eating everything from blackberries to somebody's laundry.
Yeah, they're probably more susceptible when they get into an intensive situation. But, you know, out on the range, they're much the same as sheep. And especially if you run them with cattle and sheep cattle and goats vacuum clean each other's worms. So, you know, they
makes
keep
it easy.
Yeah,
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Well done to Angoras. Federated Farmers phone number and others you'll want to jot down on your screen now. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed Rob's Country, but it will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.